All right. So here's the big one. This is the one I wanted to talk about for a long time. Steroids saved the game of baseball. This came from Salerno, which is one of the hosts of the soccer podcast. Have you? He's a very avid fan of all the other sports too. Steroids saved baseball. It's not that broad of a thing, right? I think that baseball was on a decline until that summer of '98 when McGuire and Sosa went head to head for all those home runs.
I'm gonna fix your timeline a little bit. Because it's not 98. It was the strike that fucked up baseball.
94.
Right? So like when there was a lockout and there was no baseball for a while, the fans kind of left the game and they did what everybody always does and they just go find something else to be interested in. And when baseball came back, there was a combination of a few things. Obviously, it was the home run boom with McGuire and Sosa, right? The 98 thing was more of like Barry Bonds starting to happen. And that was more like a jealousy thing, like saying like, I'm better than these guys. What are they doing? I'm about to do that too. And that's what you saw usher in with the Barry Bonds era. But basically, you're right. Steroids save baseball. I'm in such lockstep with this comment. I even had my fantasy baseball, either league or team, named this for several years. My team name or league name was Steroids Save Baseball. If there's anyone that was in that league, they will co-sign that. And also the Yankees getting good at that time also saved baseball because they had now the evil empire back. Public enemy number one. You either loved them or you hated them. And that's like the Mayweather effect, the Conor McGregor effect, the Brock Lesnar effect, where it's like, you know, if you could just split it down the middle on love or hate, you're going to get a lot of eyes on that product. But yes, steroids and the home runs. I remember Bud Selig had the home run derby in Miller Park, which is his ballpark that he basically built. And they were hitting home runs 580 feet off the top of the slide. And he's sitting there clapping and they're looking at these dudes yoked to the gills and nobody knew that they were on steroids.
That's why
baseball had a full understanding as to what was happening with steroids in that era, and they let it go. And that all came to light anyway.
Yeah, well, I tell you right now, bring back Kyle gave me bring back steroids. I want the best athletes science can create. Look, here's the thing. It's a phrase, but chicks dig the long ball. You know what I'm saying? Like that is a thing. People like to see home runs. There was times where, you know, the 1-0 game, people are like, baseball's boring. Well, if it's right, if so then give me the 9-8 game.
If you're allowing baseball players to take steroids, and you got to let Aaron Cole use his spider tag for sure.
The playing
and
field.
I don't necessarily disagree with this. Look. You shouldn't be allowed to take steroids in baseball for obvious reasons.
You can take steroids in every walk of life. You are prescribed testosterone if you're an older man and you feel like your energy is low.
Typically what happened. Well, you're not.
It's the truth.
You're not out there. You're not out there performing for money.
I'm on the radio. I'm
against other guys
YouTube.
Against other guys that are performing for money, and then there's other guys that are in the minors that might want your job. There's a lot of reasons why I don't agree that steroids should be prevalent or allowed in baseball. But I do get the concept in thinking that because it happened and because the Major League Baseball clearly knew about what was happening, that these guys that aren't getting in the Hall of Fame because of steroids, I think we could all agree that that's kind of horseshit.
That's another thing. And Ibby's coming in again. Bud Selig turned a blind eye to steroids because it saved the game, then opted to, what does it say? Ostracize? Sorry. I couldn't read that far. The Hall of Famers in the era, it's trash. They saved it and deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Is today the actual vote? I believe it is. I believe today is the vote that finds out who's the 2022 class. Because I saw a scoop come in saying that Big Papi is about to get voted into the Hall of Fame, and that man is a known steroid user. So my thing goes back to what we said before when it comes to the writers and saying like, oh, the fans should vote him in. I don't believe that the fans should vote him in. I just think there needs to be an overhaul of new writers, modern day writers. Like, look, I feel terrible, and I'm not saying terrible. They're all millionaires. They're all guys you'll talk about for the rest of your life and tell your kids about. But guys like Bonds, Clemens, like they're Sosa, maybe not so much Sosa. I don't know. But they're losing their eligibility after this year. It's over.
If your numbers dictate that you should be a Hall of Famer based on what the other Hall of Famers then you should be in now. How many pitchers in Major League Baseball gave up home runs when they were on steroids? Like if you're a middle reliever, I think that you're on steroids. If I'm a guy that is looking to make a roster, but I'm maybe a fringe player, I'm definitely taking steroids to ensure the fact that I make it because what's the risk? If I get caught, oh, well, I'm out of the league. I was never going to be in the league anyway.
Melky, they're all been suspended like multiple times. They're like, fuck this. I'm making money. Melky got paid. Because he went on steroids, bro. That like these guys they know the game. They know that the world's catching up to them. They know that their age is also never going to decrease, right? So you got to take the next step. And the next step was performance enhancing drugs.
This is probably the most controversial statement that's been made.
Which one?
And that nobody will agree with. That Kyle said, I'm not even convinced Bonds ever even took steroids.
Okay, so here's the thing with Bonds, and it's not a confirmed thing. There's never been any report. He didn't show up on Balco. He didn't show up on any of the what?
Yeah, he never tested positive.
Well, he never tested positive ever, right? But of course, if you've seen Barry Bonds in the beginning of his career, and then you saw him do his cameo in the movie Rookie of the Year,
pretty sure
he's as skinny as anybody I've ever seen, and then all of a sudden he just blew up.
Yeah,
Barry Bonds, I'm talking his head got
Barry
this
Bonds,
big.
Barry Bonds took steroids. Who cares?
I don't care. I'm just saying that
Sammy Sosa hit 60 home runs or more 3 straight seasons. Did you hear what I just said?
What was that?
60 or more home runs for 3 straight years.
All right, so maybe he does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But I'm saying he's losing his today's the day. 2012, they were entered. 2022, they're kicked off. That's garbage, man. That's absolute garbage. Because these players were players before this. And they got to the league in that level that Barry Bonds was a good goddamn baseball player before any steroid stuff. And I'm not even a Pittsburgh fan or a Giants fan.
I used to love the Pirates back in the day.
They had a nice little crew. And you know what? Speaking of Giants, the guy like, excuse me, Jeff Kent. Not in the Hall of Fame. Why? Because he was a prick to the writers.
Well,
bullshit.
Are his numbers Hall of Fame numbers?
Yes. Look him up. Look him up.
It's also important to note, too, you can take steroids and make absolutely no progress with your body whatsoever.
Correct. I know a kid in high school took steroids and didn't lift weights. And he thought it was going to be a miracle drug.
You still got to do the work.
If you're a major league athlete and you're taking steroids, I would imagine that it's in conjunction with the work. I can't imagine these guys being like, you know what, let me just do this and swing the bat. What it does for these guys in a lot of cases is forget about getting bigger or stronger. It's just injury prevention and wear and tear that just you don't feel. So if you're a middle reliever and you go out there and you throw, 40, 30 pitches, the next day you're good to go. You don't have a sore arm at all. And that's what it's doing. The recovery time is so much faster. So I would tell my brother right now, like recovering from ACL, go get something right now because you'll get better faster, right? I would recommend it. And look, I understand that the hand-eye coordination to hit a baseball doesn't come with steroids, but you know what does? Bat speed. And that's the only, coupled with hand-eye coordination, but your bat speed and the barrel going through the zone fast is the only thing that's going to change, and like natural power, like how much weight is behind it. So yeah, steroids definitely matter when it comes to hitting. That argument is definitely not right.
Hawaii might coming in. Jeff
Vinny,
Kent,
I know that you've
5.
been on Team Gooch all morning, but I'm going to disagree with you.
Top 5 in every relevant category. Scott Simmons coming in on Facebook. Appreciate you not watching on YouTube, Scott. You're doing us a disservice here, pal. But anyway, in the future, if steroid users end up being allowed in, can they revisit older players and reinstate eligibility for them? That's a good question. So after this year, like I said, Bonds is out. Everybody's out. If they eventually vote somebody in, like let's just say this, ready? Alex Rodriguez, Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer, okay? But because of all the bullshit, right, he's not going to get in, right? But let's just say in 5 years, they're like, you know what? Look, he's too good of a player not to let in. A-Rod gets in. Do you give a call up to Roger and say, hey, Clemens, listen, bro, sorry.
Do you want to know why? Because it's not like there's some rule right now that's in place that's saying if you took steroids, you can't get in.
It's just a voting
thing. It's a voting thing.
Yeah,
and it's not going to be, they're never going to be like, oh, there's a rule. We can't vote these guys in. So now we're going to change an existing rule when we never even changed one to begin with. I just don't see that happening. And it is what it is. There's guys, guess what? Life isn't fair. Pete Rose isn't in.
Pete Rose should absolutely be in as well. But that was a good one, a controversial topic that we definitely wanted to debate. And we can keep going on and on and on and on about that because it's that good and that controversial.
So Roger Clemens had steroids and spider tack.
But almost killed a man with a bat. Mike Piazza. Now, that was another one I was in the controversial takes. Somebody said that Roger Clemens threw that bat at Piazza on purpose. I think I'm with that.
I don't think that's controversial. He's a steroid abuser.
He was angry.
Threw the bat at him because he was mad. Like also, you know what I found interesting? I saw an old
because he was mad.
I saw an old video. I saw an old video of Clemens on the Red Sox facing the Yankees, and he hit Matt Noakes, and Matt Noakes caught the ball like with his elbow in his back, and he fucking threw it back at Clemens. So that's happened before. The reverse.